This is what we're looking at, this page. We asked the question, and you guys knew pretty much right away, what is a sieve? I think the synonym we said was a strainer. But you were talking about like if you're panhandling for gold or something like that. Many of us would have had a sieve in the sand when back in the sandbox glory days. So you had your plastic castle and shovel, and then you also had some kind of little sieve thing. Some of you even had a sieve that would then drop down into like a, I was going to say like a Ferris wheel, but yeah, like a little spinny wheel and all that kind of stuff. So if you keep in mind, and we're going to get to this, especially more so down here, think of this as like some kind of strainer. I think it'll make sense as to what we mean as to why the title would be the sieve in the sand. Couple things so far as titles. Part one, you remember we had the hearth and the salamander. One of the things we said is the connotation of those two things kind of go against one another, where the hearth feels all kind of warm and fuzzy. The salamander is more representative of the fire department, and they're the ones who were burning books, so it sets that conflict. Here, Montauk's trying to remember things, and we'll get into that whole sieve and the strainer. Part three means, and it's up at the top, burning bright, where at the end of part two, where does Montauk get dropped off? At his house, with the whole idea that, okay, this is now going to get burnt because of the book. So certainly his house would be something, but then there also could be some additional things, or will be some additional things towards the end of the book that we'll keep an eye on. So he does tend to be, he being Bradbury, pretty straightforward with having some significance to his titles. We kind of talked about this a little bit on Tuesday. Millie's reaction to Montauk reading books. What's her big complaint? You're sitting there reading through the books. She's kind of bored, worried. What's her number one complaint about books? Some of you can empathize with this. Okay? They aren't people.
Feel sad.
They cause like emotional problems. And this might kind of be off the idea with they aren't people. Her other complaint with it, not only are they not people, but they're also not something else that begins with an R. They are not real. Look at the growth that we've made, Tommy, since the beginning of the year. It's well done. Anything ironic about her complaints? Not real, not people. Okay, so Millie's TV family is certainly not real. That'd be a big one. Anything else? And with that, that could kind of be both. They're not real, and they're also not people. So kind of, two birds with one stone with that one. Millie have any emotional problems?
Yes.
And we don't know the whole entire reason behind it as to what's going on, and we never know for sure. But, when it comes to her emotional state, yeah, we know sleeping pills. That she ends up, has an overdose, an OD for it. This wouldn't necessarily be an emotional problem. I guess it could be at the right time of the year with Valentine's Day coming up. Where did the two of them meet? Millie and Guy? Happy Valentine's Day, honey. Remember when we met? Remember when we met?
No.
Yeah. I'll write that in this year's card. See how that goes. Can you what?
Do you ever imagine like being married to someone and just like not knowing?
Well, I mean, this would be like a unusual circumstance, but you have situations like that where, say, one person gets in a car accident, or like some kind of amnesia, where you're literally starting from scratch, kind of all over again. But right. Yeah, no, that would be a different circumstance from what's going on. Well, and with you saying, except for like Millie, but he doesn't remember either. Keep in mind, even though he's the one who wants to try to remember where they met, it's not that she's the only one who's guilty of, hey, we met in blah, blah, blah. He doesn't know what the answer to that would be either. But when it comes to like her main complaints about all this stuff, you could flip the page on her, no pun intended with the book, and all the same complaints would hold up for her. He brings up Clarice, while they're reading the books, and kind of goes, I wonder what happened to her. And she's basically going, let's not talk about her. She's dead. What's the point? And even with that, you could argue that talking to Millie is pretty much like talking to a shell of a person where physically she is not dead, but the insides, the mental capacity, the way that she thinks, for all intents and purposes, she's pretty much more of a zombie kind of character at this point, as opposed to a real living, breathing, human being. Now, Maddie, when you write your essay, don't write about zombie apocalypse that Millie comes after. That would be bad. But Mr. King told me. Back in the fun years when I taught 8th grade, imagine me with 8th graders. I just yell at, I do too. We had independent reading where they had to read a book and then give us an oral presentation about it. Yeah. So a kid read The Natural. Anyone ever read The Natural? It's a good book. Baseball player. They made a movie about The Natural. He's a natural? He is. In the movie, the guy hits a home run and the ball goes into the lights and it's like fireworks show going off. In the book, he strikes out. Nice. So when the kid was giving his summary of the book, guess which one he did?
You watched the movie.
The worst thing was the next year, a kid did the same book again. I'm like, did they not tell you about it? What did I tell you this was? Dentrifice? Well, commercial for, what's the product?
Toothpaste.
Toothpaste. Teeth detergent, basically. So, now, circumstance. And it's not that the symbolism of toothpaste that we're going to clean society and make it better or anything like that. What's happening to him while this commercial is going on? What's our situation? What's our setting? Nate? He's on the subway. Okay. And what is he reading? He has a book. He has the Bible.
How does he have a Bible?
Well, because it's one that he has. I mean, because he's been stealing. He stole books from the lady's house, but he's also had a stash from before that. So he secretly kind of has the stash. We know that Beatty probably has a good sense about it. So what's his reasoning for going to Faber's house and get another copy? Because Faber knows someone who could be a printer. Faber and Faber historically is a publishing company. So in a way, it would kind of be like, hey, let's go to where Dylan lives at Random House. Maybe they can publish a book for us or something along those lines. So he's doing with Random House being a publisher. So you certainly have an illusion here. So now he has a Bible. Now you're right. The fact that he would be sitting on the subway.
Yeah, that seems a little sketchy.
It would be. Now, with Millie kind of being a zombie-like character, and again, not zombie-like character, but more of there's not a whole lot thinking going on, people aren't going to be staring at them. If they have their seashells or earbuds, that's what's going to be kind of hypnotizing them at that point. And he's also kind of being hypnotized in a way by this advertisement that is going on. Where you're constantly, being inundated with some kind of external technological force that's happening. He's trying to read the Bible. He's also trying to do something else with it. He wants to read it, and he wants to remember it. He wants to memorize it. Now, this is when he has that flashback to the sieve and the sand. Why does that now make some sense? Think about what happens with a sieve. You put the sand in it. He's trying to read a book. He's trying to memorize a book. And you've had situations like this before, whether it's playing in the sandbox. You're absolutely right with your comparison. Whether it's playing in the sandbox where you're going to try to get as much sand in there as you can and it all still falls through, unless you mix in a little water and then it gets bumpy. Or you've been in situations where I got a reading checklist tomorrow for part number 3. I need to get as much of this as I can. Or I have a geometry test tomorrow. I need to remember these theorems as much as I can. So you try to memorize, you try to remember, you stare at the book, you put the book under your pillow, you hope that, not osmosis, but some kind of osmosis transfer takes place where you can remember what's in the book, what's in the video can go in your brain. Ultimately, how much in that way do we usually remember? Which generally ends up being not a whole lot. Maybe the part that you do keep reading, you remember. But as he's trying to remember the Bible is pretty much like the sand. The sieve is pretty much like his brain. It just cannot stay in there because he does not truly know it. He's reading a chapter from Matthew. Where in the Fahrenheit it says the lilies in the field. That's a part that's coming from the New Testament in Matthew, where the basis of that verse is you can't have two masters. You have to decide what's going to be more important. And so, in some ways, for Guy, from a symbolism, he has to kind of decide what's going to be more important for him. Is it going to be life? In a world that doesn't have books? Could it potentially be death because you're trying to get books? Is it going to be technology? Is it going to be literature? But certainly the symbolism would be this whole idea with the sieve and the sand, that it's very much like what's happening in his brain or in his mind, that he can't absorb all that information the way that he truly wants to. Millie does throw out the question, what's more important, me or the Bible?
I know a lot of people say the Bible.
Well, and it's not just the fact that, you have a random Bible or whatnot with you, but if you have, as far as you know, the last known copy, and it doesn't have to be, the Bible, but of any kind of sacred or holy kind of scripture, that would be a debate that, a lot of people would argue it might be the Bible more so than a whole other person. How does he get favor to agree to go along with him? And what's the book? He's ripping the Bible. So Faber can't stand to watch that happen. Faber agrees to help him. Faber knows that by helping him, what's he doing with his own life potentially? He's risking it. So really, Faber decides what's more important, my life or the Bible. He would be a character who chooses, the Bible for it. So where Millie kind of throws out the question, in some ways, Faber answers it. On your study guide, at the bottom of the first half, the study guide that you just got back, there was a question asking about what does Faber say is important when it comes to literature, and this was one that was kind of throwing some people, I think, for a little bit of a loop, because he gets a fairly long-winded explanation to it. What are his 3 criteria that make books, literature so important? So it's the quality of the text. So the quality of the book, the quality of the literature is critical. And then he goes into, you're talking about the texture. It has to have pores. And I think people were putting down texture and pores as examples 2 and 3. but it was still all a continuation of the same one. So I might have circled that one and given you partial credit for it. But when it comes to books for him, there's three important elements about it, why they're necessary. One thing that you have to have is definitely, the quality of books, quality of literature. So you have to have the leisure time to digest the literature. Now, some of us might kind of laugh a little bit, like leisure time. Reading Fahrenheit 451 isn't leisure time, as you can. It's assignment time. Well, and last week we threw out the question: when did people stop reading? And the main answer was when people would say probably between some point in elementary school when it becomes kind of forced upon you. But if you have leisure time to read, and people still, I would say you have leisure time reading. It might be article, it might not necessarily be a book that's happening. Could be poetry, could be music, which is still going to be verse, still going to be songs. But for books to have meaning, for books to cause folks to remember them, you have to have a quality book. You have to have quality literature. It has to have some kind of texture to it. You have to be able to have the time to digest that literature. And then the third one, and you could argue this one is the most important, and Jack, you started to mention it. These two things give you what, then? What's the third one? The right to choose your own action based from the book and the time that you have had to digest it. So why books have become so important for Faber, again, this is Faber's idea. It's not that they're important because books are good or that books provide leisure time and entertainment, but it gives people the ability to choose your own action. And if you take a look at countries or areas, places where censorship tends to prevail, what does it limit people, their ability to do? Make their own choice, make their own actions. So there might be something where, talking about the essay standpoint, and we're going to write something with the book, you might kind of take a look at the way that censorship is done. And certainly censorship has been part of U.S. history, not just, other countries as well. But why people are so against censorship is it limits the ability that a person has to choose your own action. If you don't choose your own action, then basically you have a country or an area that is going to be full of followers, and that's the concern that Bradbury has. Bradbury's main fear is not that a government is going to take books away. His main fear is going to be what? Not that books are taken, but that people, well, you forget because you no longer care about it or want them, or you could argue need them. His main concern is that you would have an uneducated populace that'll be a bunch of followers because they choose or think that they're no longer necessary, and that ends up being his primary concern. Since we were just kind of talking about it with number 5, we'll come back here to number 4, ripping the Bible apart and the effect that it has. This forces Faber to help Montague publish books, and why this is such a significant element within the text. It symbolizes that Faber will risk his life for literature. And if you were again to compare that to someone, this would essentially be the anti-Millie. Opposite of what Millie would do. So, forces Faber to help Montague publish books, symbolizes that Faber will risk his life for literature. Again, total opposite of something that Millie would not be willing to do. If we put Gavin at one goal line, we put the mechanical hound at the other goal line, and they run towards each other, who's winning? Yeah, like where'd Nate come from?
Wait, what does Gavin have on? How much does Tom weigh? Does Gavin have a
I would think it's a pretty good 50-60 pack. Wait, no, this is just
Dude,
Gavin.
that's like my weight.
He's got boots and a flannel and jeans.
Does it have the needle thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a book. He has a book on him too. That's why the hound's after him.
Hit him with the book. Yeah.
What's the plan for Faber and Montauk? So, Salamander is representative of fire department. They are going to plant books, not like watch them grow books, but put them in not good areas. Plant books in the homes of firemen. And so with the idea of who's going to be planting the books, Guy's going to do it. So you have one fireman is going to be taking down another fireman. So the salamander, the fire department, going to devour its own tail. Basically, the fire department's going to eat itself alive. It's turning against one another. Firefighters in the book, in the story, we have Guy, we have Captain Beatty. Remember the other two names? Pardon? No. What are their last names for? I guess it could be a last name somewhere. Black and Stoneman. Black firefighter, so ashes, soot, dirt, all that kind of stuff that you would connotate with like burning something, that it would be coming on you. So you know he has been blackened by all of the smoke, all of the dust. Stoneman, if someone has a stone look on their face, we would say this is a person who shows little emotion. So it would seem to be a person who's apathetic, a person who does not care. So they're pretty appropriate names for people who would be in the fire department, covered with the black, the cinders, the soot, all that stuff. And you don't really care what you do. You just simply do what you're told. You burn the books.
Yeah, what if like the books were just like the authors like that, full name, and
And
like
then we're
these like
sitting here
people that
like,
just like
it's this and
it's like going to like microscopes and stuff. Everything going full detective mode on it.
That's the fun part.
It's like, next.
Well, yesterday, what was the big letdown for, I don't know, 2/3 of the nation? Okay, so it could be because A, the Super Bowl was boring.
Yes.
It could be because the Patriots won, depending upon fan base and all that stuff. After the game, post game conference, Sean McVay, head coach of the Rams, identified the reason why they lost the game was because he got outcoached. Because basically Belichick, the Patriots, did a better job of preparation and planning than I did. He got outcoached. If you are a professional whatever, you know, whether it be coach, athlete, but let's say you're a professional coach, you automatically, don't put everything away, when you are setting up a game plan, you automatically do things because you just know that's the right move to be. Whether it be where you're going to be positioning safeties defensively, how you're going to be putting people in motion or whatever, but you don't necessarily think about it. But that's what you do, that's your profession, that's your job. You know what is the right call for the right time for the right situation. When it would come to a professional writer, it's a different trade and it's different tools. I would say a lot of it tends to be subconscious. What do you do with character names, or what do you do with symbols or setting or word choice? You use the right word, you use the right example, you use the right character at the appropriate time. So, is it purposeful that he would do something like Beatty, Black, Stoneman, things like that? I'd go yes. I don't think, and this is no insult toward Gavin, whether Gavin's writing it or me, we would have to probably put more thought into making that appropriate choice, where for him, it's an easy thing to do. Like Faber being a publisher, yeah, I'm 100% sure he purposely does that, but I think for him, because that's his profession, that's his craft, that's what he's able to do. If any of you are really good at pottery or art, you're able to do things because you just know it's the appropriate time, the appropriate way, the appropriate method, where those of us not so good with it, we have to kind of deal with it a little bit different. Number 7, I want to get this one taken care of. Fire and water. On page 99, Faber is talking to Guy. What's their main piece of connection that they have? Here, take a seat. We've got a couple minutes. It's not a seashell, but he's got a radio transmitter that goes, obviously, into his ear so they can stay into connection. Faber says to him, we will be Montauk plus Faber is going to equal kind of like a new person. We're not just one, we're not just two people, but we have kind of created a new idea. We will be Montauk plus Faber. He then goes, we will be fire plus water. So the idea that you have a fireman, a person who used to start fires to burn books, we have an old English professor, a guy who would use water to put that fire out, and then he says we're going to create something new where it basically becomes wine. Their hope is that as their plan continues to go, not only do you create a new person, but fire plus water is going to create also for them a new era, new world, new way of life. Well, keep in mind, what's the one of the variables of the Bible is that water wine. So I would say you're playing off the connotation with it. Something new, something unexpected, something that can't be explained, but we're hoping to really be a new way of life.